Good morning, grade 4. It's good to see you again. Hope you're well, hope you're rested, hope you're ready for some maths. As always, just a reminder, if you have any questions, you want to go through anything, you need some help with something, grade 4 at WorksheetCloud.com. And after the lesson, click on the link above and do the worksheet so that you are sure that you're on track and you have mastered what it is that we cover today. My name is Mr. Travis, and the next slide, as per normal, or as has become our custom, is a mental arithmetic. 10 questions. I'll give you 40 seconds for it. Today we're looking at subtraction, so mental subtraction, the sort of things that you'll be able to do in your head. There are 10 questions. Sometimes you're looking for the answer. Sometimes you're looking for one of the numbers that went into the question. So something minus 5 equals 4. And you'd have to work out that it was 9 minus 5 equals 4. Sometimes it will be looking for the answer. Remember, as always, it's more important to be right than to be quick, particularly in maths. So I would rather you took your time and only completed 5 and got all 5 right than to rush through and complete all 10 and get 7 of them wrong and only 3 right. So focus on accuracy first. Your 40 seconds start now. Halfway. And stop. Okay, let's have a go through those quickly. So the first one, 13 minus 3 is 10. That's a straightforward one. The next one, 10 minus something equals 0. Well, if you take 10 away from 10, you'll get 0. So the answer for that one is 10. For the next one, something minus 6 gives me 3. So you've got to work backwards to find out what you started with. So if I look at those numbers, pardon me, I can see I started with a number that was 3 bigger than 6. That's how I ended up with 3. So my answer was 3, and I'm looking for a number that's 3 bigger than 6. So really what I can do is just add those two together. So I can go 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 is the number that's missing there at the start. So number 3, the answer was 9. 4, answer is 1. 5, 9 minus something gives me 4. So I've got to find out what I took away from 9 to be left with 4. So what I can do is I can also go 9 minus 4 to find out what it was that I already minused. So 9 minus 4 is 5, and then the missing number in number 5 is 5. Looking at number 6, something minus 7 gives me 3. So the number I started with was 3 more than 7. So 8, 9, 10. So for 6, the missing number is 10. For 7, the answer is 5. For 8, I've subtracted something and I've ended up with 2. So what the difference is I can, well, it's the number that was in between. So I can take 8 and minus 2, 8 and minus 2, and I find what I've already minused. So in this case, it's 6. And you can always go back and check your answer when you get it. So 8 minus 6 is 2, so then 6 was the correct one. So for 8, the missing number is 6. For number 9, I started with a number that was 5 bigger than 7, which is 12. So the answer or the missing number in number 9 is 12. Oh, that's useless. I wrote down the whole thing for number 10. Well, if you got that wrong, there's definitely something that we need to check with your maths. All right, let's go on to today's lesson. All right, today we're looking at subtraction. We looked at addition before. Different words for subtraction are minus, difference. We often say less. Difference means the difference between two numbers, which is subtraction. Okay, lesson goals. I would like you to know that there are different correct ways to subtract, and I really don't mind which one you use as long as it works for you. I'm going to focus on the column method, which is the one we did with addition, but this time with subtraction. And hopefully by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to use this subtraction method. First of all, when we don't borrow, and second of all, when we do borrow. The borrowing thing will make more sense once we get there, and you'll see it. So perhaps you've done it and you don't know it's called borrowing. Perhaps you do know it's called borrowing and you already know how to do it. All right. Okay, so let's go to our whiteboard and subtraction. Okay, I thought I would start with some examples. It's easy enough to learn as we go. So the first one I'm going to do, 864 minus 321. So I always give these problems like this, in this format, and then I teach the children I teach maths to put them in a different format. So I'm going to put them in columns, as I did yesterday with addition. Not yesterday, in the last lesson with addition. So lining them up on the right-hand side, making sure I write my sign down. And now I'm going to minus each place value one at a time. So I'll start by looking at my units, and I'll go 4 minus 1 is 3. Then I will look at my tens. 6 minus 2 is 4. Then I will look at my hundreds. 8 minus 3 is 5. And there's my answer, 543. Let's do another one. If you'd like to go ahead and do these without waiting, if you're comfortable with them, then maybe just practice. Subtraction is one of those things, one of the 4 basic operations that you are going to do this year in all of the terms, next year in all of the terms, all through primary school. Your teachers will keep coming back to the basic operations. So how good is it to get this right and know that every single time you do it, as long as your mental arithmetic is good, you're going to be fine for this section. So the second one, 596 minus 154. So first up, we put them in the correct format. So I lay them out in columns, 596, and underneath, lining up on the right, 154. Put in my subtraction, put in my answer box, and here we go. So looking at my units first, 6 minus 4 is 2. Then looking at my tens, 9 minus 5 is 4. And then looking at my hundreds, 5 minus 1 is 4. So the answer is 442. You can see how with good mental arithmetic it flows really nicely and you can focus on the process. But if you're taking long with the mental arithmetic, you sometimes get stuck. If you're going 9 minus 5, and then you might take a while and you get stuck and you forget what the next step is. So I think it's really important to focus on your mental arithmetic. Right, number 3. This time I decided to give you one that has not the same number of digits in both. So we've got a 3-digit one and a 2-digit one. And I'm doing this because I want to show you about, or remind you why it's important to line things up on the right. When I say line things up on the right, it's just really saying that we've got to put the correct place value under each one. So 682, and the units needs to go under there, and the tens needs to go under there. So we are lining it up on the right, but it's really lining up the place value for each. So once again, starting with my units, 2 minus 1 is 1. 8 minus 6 is 2. And over here, I've got 6 minus nothing because the second number has no hundreds. We just don't write our numbers like that. But if we needed to put a 0, we could. It doesn't change the meaning of the number. So 6 minus nothing is still 6. Number 4, and this is going to be the first one where we have what I called borrowing. You'll see now what I mean. So 731 minus 222. First up, I'm going to lay it out correctly. So 731 minus 222. And I'm going to start with my units. 1 minus 2, so that's 1, isn't it? No. What you did, or what I did on purpose, is the most common mistake that grade 5s make, and that is that they choose to minus the big number from the small, or the small number from the big number, but it's always the top one minus the bottom one. So you're saying, I've got 1, but I'm trying to take away 2, and you can't do that. And so what number 1 does, and when I say number 1, I mean this one over here, is he's going to borrow from his neighbor over here in the tens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross that out, I'm going to make it a 2. Now that wasn't actually 30. It was, sorry, let me try that again. That wasn't actually 3, it was 30 because it's in the tens column. And so when I cross it out and make it 2, I'm making it a 20. And I need to carry that 10 across to my units column. And what that means is that this number here is now actually 11, not 2. So I'm not going 1 plus 1. Because I borrowed 10 from my tens column, it's now 11 that's over there. So 11 minus 2 is 9. Then I'm going to go to my tens column, and I'm going to now look at this number because I only have 2 left. I'm going to say 2 minus 2 is 0. And now I go across to my hundreds column, and 7 minus 2 is 5. So my answer is 509. So that's what I mean from borrowing. It's going to the neighbor or to the next column over and having a look, and then using that number or the extra number that's there to help you. Okay, let me move it down a little bit in case you want to look at that while you're doing the next one, because the next one I'd like you to try on your own. Again, it's going to have borrowing. Your teachers won't tell you if it's got borrowing or not normally. You should be able to, by the end of the lesson, manage either way. So 836 minus 662. So you try this one while I lay it out. I'll give you a few seconds to get going. I'll write down number 6 in the meantime as well. Okay, let's go through number 5 quickly. We look at our units first. 6 minus 2 is 4. Now we look at our tens. 3 minus 6. I've only got 3, but I need 6. So I'm going to have to go to my neighbor and borrow. So I'm going to borrow from my neighbor. That becomes, it looks like a 7, and we treat it as a 7, but it actually is 700, which means we're carrying 1 across here, and we treat this as a 13, when in actual fact it means 130. So it's 130 minus 60. Minus 60, that's what we're actually doing. But because we've got zeros on the end, we can pretend that they're not there. Okay, so 13 minus 6 is, yes, good, 7. It's your mental arithmetic that comes in, that's important. 7 minus 6 in my hundreds is 1, so my answer is 174. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to get started with number 6. Pay attention to it. I'm going to lay it out in the meantime. How many of you got stuck? How many of you noticed that this is not a subtraction problem, it's an addition problem? I didn't do that as a mistake. I did that on purpose because remember I mentioned that this was the most common mistake that grade 4s make? Well, the second most common is that they get the operation wrong. So they either do a plus when it's a minus or a minus when it's a plus. And so often your teachers are going to give you a combination of plus and minus problems together. And you need to be super careful that you always do the correct operation. So this is in fact the revision from last lesson. This is an addition problem. I'm going to do it quickly. It's not what we're focusing on today, but let's do it anyway. So 6 plus 2 is 8. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. Carry the 1, drops down. Answer 1,248. So please be careful of those two things. Note that that is an addition problem and not a subtraction problem. Okay, number 7. Moving away from our mistakes or our purposeful mistakes. All right, this one I'm going to do as a worked example because I've got more than one set of borrowing. It still follows the same format, but I'm just going to do one with you before I set you on your own. So 1, 3, 6, 7, making sure now my place values line up. So the 9 is in the hundreds, so 9 needs to go there. In other words, lining up on the right-hand side. This is a subtraction problem. 7 minus 8, I can't do. So I've got to borrow from my neighbor. Cross it out and it becomes a 5. And this is now 17. 17 minus 8 is 9. Looking at my tens, I'm now going 5 minus 3 is, 5 minus 3 is 2. Looking at my hundreds, I'm trying to go 3 minus 9. I can't do that. I'm going to have to go to my thousands. The thousands group is going to lend me all of him, so he's going to have none left. And this is now going to be 13. So 13 minus 9 is 4. I have nothing in the thousands column, so it's like nothing over there. But we don't write the nothing because it would be weird to say there are 0,429. It's like me saying I'm 0,139 years old. It's not wrong, but it's clumsy. And so we leave that out. So we just leave a blank space over there. Right, the next one I'd like you to try on your own. So 8, and the question is 2,873 minus 1,174, 1,174. Shift the screen across. Right, you start. I'll give you a head start of about 10 seconds and then I'll lay it out. If you'd like more time, just pause it. And I have deep respect for those people who pause it and try it themselves and then come back rather than just watching me do it. I mean, I'm a maths teacher. I know how to do this. I still make mistakes, but I do know how to do this. So it's best for you to try on your own first. Okay, so I'm going to go 3 minus 4. I can't do it. If you've got a bigger number at the bottom, you're going to have to borrow. So I'm going to go to my 7 and I'm going to borrow. You might notice that that's going to mean my tens don't have enough, but that doesn't matter. I'm still generous in my tens and I'm going to lend. So I've lent 1 or 10 to the units. I now go 13 minus 4 is 9. I now look at my tens and I'm trying to go 6 minus 7, which I can't do. So I'm going to have to borrow from my hundreds. And this is now 16. So 16 minus 7 is also 9. Then I go to my hundreds. 7 minus 1 is 6. And finally in my hundreds, 2 minus 1 is 1. So my answer is 1,699. I always like to leave some showing so that you can see, you can always check back and look at an example. I find that's a really, really useful way to help us remember is if we can't remember what to do, we go back to one of the ones that we have done that is right, and we can try and follow our thought process, and then we can use that thought process to do a new problem. So that's why I'm leaving 7 and 8 showing while we do number 9 and 10. So I'm going to start with 1,006, and I'm going to subtract 787. So you get going on that one. I'm going to write down 10 at the same time. And I'm going to lay them out solemn. If you'd like a little bit more time, just pause the video so that it gives you a little bit more time. So I've got to go 6 minus 7 are the bigger numbers on the bottom, so I can't. But my neighbor doesn't have anything. So what am I going to do? Well, my neighbor is going to go to his neighbor, who also doesn't have anything. And his neighbor is going to go to his neighbor, and his neighbor does have something. So we're going to borrow from the thousands. But we don't borrow all the way across, because we only lend to our neighbors. So we've got rid of all of the thousands. But what that does, that means that now in the hundreds we have 10. And now the 10, or the hundreds, can lend to the tens. So I cross this whole thing out. And that now becomes 9. And I give the 10 over to, or the 10 over to the tens. And again, I need to borrow from them. So I cross that out, and that becomes 9. And now I can put the one there, and that becomes 16. So 16 minus 7 is 9. Now I'm looking at the number I have left, which is 9. So 9 minus 8 is 1. So it's quite nice that actually when we borrowed all the way down, we gave to each of the ones along the way, and they actually now have enough. Looking at my hundreds, 9 minus 7 is 2. Nothing in the thousands. 0 minus 0 is 0. We don't write that because it's meaningless. 0 thousands. It's just clumsy. Pause if you'd like more time. I'm going to jump straight into number 10. This one should be relatively straightforward. It works along the same patterns. All of subtraction, if we're using column method, works in the same pattern. Subtract, and if you can't, borrow. Subtract, and if you can't, borrow, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to go 8 minus 9. The bigger number's on the bottom. I can't do it, so I have to borrow. Becomes a 2, becomes 18. 18 minus 9 is 9. 2 minus 5 I can't do, I've got to borrow. So now 12 minus 5 is 7. Go to my hundreds. 1 minus 5 I can't do, have to borrow. 11 minus 5 is 6. And in my hundreds, 4 minus 1 is 3. And so my answer is 3,679. That's subtraction. It's as straightforward as that. Each time you try and subtract the place value, and if you can't, you borrow. And you keep borrowing until you've got it. Underpinning all of this is your mental arithmetic. So like the practice of the first 10 that we started with today, if you're going 18 minus 9 over here, if you're going 18 minus 9 and you're getting 7, your answer is going to be wrong. And it's not because you didn't know how to do subtraction, it's because your mental arithmetic let you down. And that's why, as I say, probably 2 or 3 times every lesson, mental arithmetic is really, really important. So please take the time. One of my past students was awful at times tables. And I had this conversation with her about doing her times tables and practicing. And she probably spent 10 to 15 minutes a day practicing her times tables. And you know what? Her times tables now are excellent. And it took a couple of months before she could really see the results, but it really, really, really made a difference to her marks in maths. And she was really proud when she did it, and it's worth investing the time to do it. That's subtraction. As I said, going to come up over and over again, all the way through primary school, and you're going to use it when you do the more complicated things when you get to high school. That's it for today. The worksheet is when you click the link above to practice. Make sure that you've managed to do subtraction with borrowing. And if you have any questions, you want to share anything, you want me to cover a topic in future, email me grade4@worksheetcloud.com. Grade 4s, have an absolutely fantastic day. I'll see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.